Hello and good afternoon, everyone. If you have just started watching, we are currently talking about A Brilliant Solution by Carol Birkin, a book that informs us of what the U.S. was going through in 1787, the year our founding fathers saved our nation from falling into anarchy. Brownie, can you tell us more about how this convention played a part in U.S. history?
Brownie. Anything? Nothing?
Anyway, this convention, along with a handful of delegates, helped pull our country together after the Revolutionary War with Britain and created our Constitution, which is still in place today, 229 years later. To discuss this piece of history further, Brownie and I will be going to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where all of this started. I am now here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, a couple blocks away from where our whole government was created, in Independence Hall. This is a sketch of what Independence Hall was supposed to look like in 1787, when the Constitution was happening, and this is a picture of it today. The story starts in 1786. Americans are beginning to see the Articles of Confederation false. For example, the U.S. owed $160 million after the Revolutionary War and had no way to pay the money back because the government didn't have the right to tax or the power of the purse. Also, there was no organized central power over trade between states. Lastly, as shown by Shays' Rebellion, there was no central power or army to speak of to stop uprisings and revolts. It was mainly because of this that a convention was called at Independence Hall for May of 1787. When the Declaration of Independence was written, Independence Hall was very beautiful and easy, comfortable to be in. However, a plague of huge black flies were in Philadelphia at the time, and the windows had to be shut in Independence Hall, and there was no air conditioning, which was making it hot and stuffy. However, the 55 delegates still came, and the 55 delegates were: from Connecticut, William Samuel Johnson, Roger Sherman, and Oliver Ellsworth. From Delaware, George Reed, Gunning Bedford Jr., John Dickinson, Richard Bassett, and Jacob Broome. From Georgia, William Few, Abraham Baldwin, William Houston, and William L. Pierce. From Maryland, James McHenry, Daniel of St. Thomas Juniper, Daniel Carroll, Luther Martin, and John F. Mercer. From Massachusetts, Nathaniel Gorham, Rufus King, Elbridge Gerry, and Caleb Strong. From New Hampshire, John Langdon and Nicholas Gilman. From New Jersey, William Livingston, David Brearley, William Patterson, Jonathan Dayton, and William C. Houston. From New York, Alexander Hamilton, John Langston Jr., and Robert Gates. From North Carolina, William Blount, Richard Dobbs Speight, Hugh Williamson, William R. Davie, and Alexander Martin. From Pennsylvania, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Mifflin, Robert Morris, George Clymer, Thomas Fitzsimmons, Jared Ingersoll, James Wilson, and Gouverneur Morris. From South Carolina, John Rutledge, Charles Cokesworth Pinckney, Charles Pinckney, and Pierce Butler. And lastly, from Virginia, John Blair, James Madison Jr., George Washington, George Mason, James McClurg, Edmund J. Randolph, and George Wythe. Rhode Island was the only state that did not send any delegates to the Constitutional Convention. Because their population was so small, they were worried that if a new government was created, they would have no say. The age of the delegates also varied greatly. Jonathan Dayton was 26, and Benjamin Franklin, who was 81, was so old and sick, he was carried to the convention on a sedan chair. Only 39 of the 55 delegates actually signed the Constitution. As stated on page 50, although most of these men shared a wealthy upbringing, their personalities were quite different. So how did all of them manage to agree on a constitution? Well, if they had one thing in common, it was a need for a better central government, and they were all willing to compromise to save the United States of America. Also, as it says on page 47, where Carol Birkin wrote, in order to have an open, free-willing discussion of issues, they needed assurances that their image as decisive political leaders would not be jeopardized. In short, the delegates took an oath of silence and decided not to tell anyone or record anything about what was happening in the Constitutional Convention to protect their public image. As it says on page 69, Edmund Randolph proposed our current branches of government, that a national government ought to be established consisting of a supreme legislative, executive, and judiciary. When put to a vote, only Roger Sherman didn't vote for Randolph's proposal. The only reason we have any idea of what happened during the Constitutional Convention was because James Madison secretly wrote everything that happened down each day in a journal that today is an historical record. The delegates had initially planned to simply repair the Articles of Confederation, but none of them men who had actually come to the Constitutional Convention were against drastic change. So the Articles of Confederation were pretty much done for. Instead, all the delegates were eager for a new government. However, nobody agreed on the type of new government. The delegates were split on how many votes each state would get. The smaller states, like New Hampshire and New Jersey, wanted one vote per state, while the larger states wanted the votes to depend on population and money per capita, like Virginia. Also, the states were split on whether or not the slaves' population would count. Later, they came up with the 3/5 rule, which meant that 3 out of the 5 slaves would be counted towards the population of a state. Although many things had been decided, there was still a long ways to go before a constitution was created. As page 71 says, the Temple of Accord became the Tower of Babel. Along with the delegates' discussions, there came a lot of apprehension over abuse of power. As stated on page 83, most delegates still carried the scars of struggle for control between king and colonists. So, as shown in the text, the delegates weren't going to leave any possibility of tyranny. And on page 95, it showed there was still a long ways to go by saying, the process of fine-tuning was never ending. You can buy a brilliant solution on Amazon or your local bookstore to keep up with the next newscast. Until then, have a good afternoon. It's 12:30 p.m. on Sunday, August 21st. And signing out from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania is Hannah Wall and Browning. Thank you for watching.